Hi, I hope you're all having a really good 2018 so far. I haven't really done anything apart from sleep and read, so it's been pretty good. As always, at the beginning of the new year, we like to reflect and look back on last year and the best books and films of the year. So that's what I'm going to do. I've done a list of my top 10 books, but they're not in any order because I'm indecisive. So these are just like the top 10 equally loved books that I read in 2017. I'm going to start off with graphic novels, and at the very beginning of 2017, which means I need to reread it because I've forgotten the intricacies of the plot, I read Fables by Bill Willingham, and this is basically kind of a fantasy graphic novel set around fairy tale characters but in the modern world. It's kind of like Once Upon a Time, but it's a bit more gritty. It's not as kind of warm fuzzies, it's kind of gritty, and it's more about kind of the divisions between the different kind of class systems of like fairy tale characters, which sounds weird, but it is really interesting, and it's also really funny, and it has really cool art in it as well. So I really want to get to the next volume of this in 2018. Next, in 2017, I really enjoyed My Friend Dahmer by Derf Backderf, and this was so interesting to me because it's about the author, kind of, who when he was in high school was friends with Jeffrey Dahmer, who is obviously infamous for being a serial killer and a rapist and a necrophiliac and loads of horrible things. It sympathises with him to a point because it's about his high school life and what his life was like and how the people around him reacted to him and what he was like in the early stages, but then it very much loses any sympathy with him once he starts killing. In my view, it doesn't romanticize the idea of killing or being a tortured kind of bad person. It doesn't do that at all. It kind of makes you feel quite uncomfortable, and it basically, if anything, points out the warning signs. It doesn't say, oh well, he was kind of a good guy, so maybe we should feel a bit sorry for him because his home life was a bit shit. It's like, no, this guy came from a really bad background, but he handled it in completely the wrong way. So yeah, and I think this is also a very unique graphic novel. I mean, no one else could have written this, I mean, obviously. So yeah, this was interesting, and I would recommend it if you're interested. I also love Tangleweed and Brine by Deirdre Sullivan, and for each book that I'm going to talk about, I'm actually going to read a little bit out because I love doing my opening lines video, and also like for a lot of the books that I've picked because of the writing style, and it's really hard to describe why the writing style is good, so I'm just going to read it out. But this is a series of kind of modernized feminist fairy tales. Modernized in the sense that they have like modern feminist kind of gender themes, but not modern in the sense that they have like cars and like skyscrapers and stuff. It's very much kind of still folk tale fairy tales, but I really enjoyed it, and Deirdre Sullivan's writing is really enchanting, really beautiful, and there's so many stories in here that I just loved. And it took me quite a long time to read, which is usually not a good thing with me because it means I'm bored, but with this I wanted to just savor each story, and there's so much detail and description in each story that I wanted to really take my time over it. This is the opening to the story You Shall Not Suffer, which is a retelling of Hansel and Gretel. You grew up soft. Your tender heart would nurse a frightened field mouse rescued from a trap, would make a splint. You tried to help, but always it would die. You gave them names. You were a friendless child, a barrel-chested, sturdy little thing who played alone, who looked up through the branches seeking nests, needing something kinder than a human. Another book I loved in 2017 was The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. This is a sci-fi novel, but it doesn't feel sci-fi. Obviously, it's set in space on a spaceship, and there's lots of aliens around, so that sounds weird that I've said it doesn't feel like a sci-fi novel, but it's very character driven. If you were to ask me what the plot is, there's not really a kind of structural plot in the sense that this happens which leads to this and then there's a climax and then a resolution. It's just a kind of series of events that happen that reveal things about characters and bring characters closer together. And I guess the thread that ties them together is this crew on the Wayfarer, and it's a mismatch of humans and aliens, and they're basically tunnelers, so they have to bridge tunnels between different parts of the galaxy, and that's kind of what they're in space doing. And then a series of events happens on their travels that kind of leads them to different things, trying to be as non-spoilery as possible. As usual, just makes me sound vague and inarticulate, but yeah. In 2017 I read the Shades of Magic trilogy by V.E. Schwab, which I completely fell in love with. My favourite book was probably the third one, Conjuring of Light, just because it's like what the other two books were building up to, and it's the longest, and I kind of took the most time over it to kind of really, like, I guess, savor it and kind of say goodbye to the characters. I love it. I love the characters, I love the world. The fantasy world in this book is so vivid and so visual, and it's just so easy to get wrapped up in, and the writing is beautiful. I obviously can't read too much of it because, spoilers, being the third book, but I'll read like the kind of quote at the beginning that kind of gives you a taste of like what it's like. Pure magic has no self. It simply is a force of nature, the blood of our world, the marrow of our bones. We give it shape, but we must never give it soul. I also read The Six of Crows duology in 2017, and obviously I have to put one of the books on here. I couldn't really decide which one, but probably Crooked Kingdom again, because it's just the one that wraps up the story. So it's kind of like the big climax or whatever. I loved it. I love these characters. I love this world. Again, it's so vivid and so clear, and Leigh Bardugo's writing just brings it to life. And I can't really read any of this because it's spoilers and stuff, but all the hype for these books is merited. If you've, not got on the bandwagon yet, please just go do it, because they're incredible and I love them, and I'm so excited for anything that Leigh Bardugo writes. Honestly, would read anything. So the next fantasy novel that I read was Lord of Shadows by Cassandra Clare. And of course, like, this is so predictable that I've put a Cassandra Clare book on it, because she releases a new one every year, and every year it's like my most anticipated thing, and every year she never lets me down. And I love her writing, I love her words, I love her characters, I love Shadowhunters, and this series has like been in my life since I was like 13 or 14, and it's so long as well. You can just get lost in this for hours, and it just, the world falls away when these books come out, and I love them so much. And we're into my top 3 of the year, which is really exciting. I've put The Hate U Give on here, which I don't need to say much about because everyone has already hyped this book up so much, and it deserves it so much. So yeah, read this book. That's all I need to say, just read this book. The next incredible book that I read in 2017 was The Disreputable History of Frankie Landau Banks. This book is insane. I absolutely adore it. Like, I've just kind of found the bit that I want to use for my quote, and already I just want to reread it. The characters are so vivid, and E. Lockhart's writing is so addictive, and it's not in the sense that it's written kind of beautifully like a fantasy novel and it's very descriptive and visual. It's just, you care so much about the characters, and the writing is so intelligent and precise, and it's very easy to read. But the opening just hooked me. It's a letter from Frankie to the headmaster of her boarding school, I believe. Yeah. And just instantly I was hooked and kind of in love with Frankie and ready to read this book. It's an incredible look at gender and privilege and youth and feminism, but it doesn't bat you over the head with feminist theory. It's not like, oh, this is why you should be a feminist. You just read it, and it's such a smart critique, and you just end up asking yourself so many questions, and it's just incredible. Please read it if you haven't already. To Headmaster Richmond or the Board of Directors, Alabaster Preparatory Academy. I, Frankie Landau Banks, hereby confess that I was the sole mastermind behind the maldoings of the Loyal Order of the Basset Hounds. I take full responsibility for the disruptions caused by the order, including the Library Lady, the Doggies in the Window, the Night of 1,000 Dogs, the Canned Beet Rebellion, and the abduction of the Guppy. That is, I wrote the directives telling everyone what to do. And probably my top book of the year, which is why I've left it till last, was The Princess Diarist by Carrie Fisher. I knew I had to put a Carrie Fisher book on here because I read 4 of her books in 2017, 3 of which were memoirs, and I just fell in love with all of them. Her writing is so intelligent, and it's funny, and it's so honest and raw, and you read it and you feel like you have some unique insight into her crazy world and her crazy life, but also just that you're talking to someone that you've known for years. In it, she publishes the diary entries that she wrote, while she was filming Star Wars, and while she was filming Star Wars she was 19, and when I read this I was 19. So a lot of the things that she's writing about, like a lot of her self-doubt and a lot of her anxieties about who she is as a person but also entering the film industry, really resonated with me. And it's a kind of voice that you don't get a lot, because obviously you think of Carrie Fisher, you think that she's a legend and you think that she's so iconic and she must be so confident and so secure in her sense of self because everyone loves her and no one has a bad word to say about her. But you read the stuff that she wrote as a teenager and she's so insecure and she doesn't know her place, and obviously she was dealing with mental health problems throughout her life, and those things never go away no matter how famous you get or how validated you might feel, you know, by a big audience. And that was just so kind of comforting to read about, because it's like, if you doubt yourself when you're Carrie Fisher, it's like, it makes it okay for kind of the regular Joe blogs to doubt them. You know, I know that's a really dumb thing to say, like, oh, celebrities are human too, but that's kind of what this says, but in a much more eloquent and heartfelt way, and I just completely fell in love with this book. Who do I think I would have been if I hadn't been Princess Leia? Am I Princess Leia or is she me? Split the difference and you'd be closer to the truth. Star Wars was and is my job. It can't fire me and I'll never be able to quit, and why should I want to? That's both a rhetorical and a real question. Today, while going through some boxes containing some old writing of mine, I found the diaries I kept while filming the first Star Wars movie 40 years ago. Stay tuned. Thanks so much for watching this video, and as always, leave me comments of the best books that you read over the course of last year, and I'd love to check them out and respond and all of those fun things. Cool. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon with another video. Bye!